You may have heard about this idea of protection. The thought that when you're doing magic or witchcraft or any meditations, or really at any point within your life, that you want to kind of add that little bit extra feelings of safety and that extra protection around you. So you may have heard people talk about this a lot. And as lots of spells and lots of rituals start with create protection, add some protection. When you're doing anything, when you're doing readings or anything, people may say, add the protection. But you may not be aware of what this protection is, why it's so important, or how you can use it, how you can create it. What sort of things can you use as protection? And that's exactly what I'm talking about now in this video. And if you're just starting out in witchcraft and spellcraft and paganism in general, then this is a really good place for you to start getting this protection sorted, getting this idea of protecting yourself as being something that you do regularly and something that's just becomes part of your practice. So what are we being protected from? Well, lots of people will tell you that we're protecting ourselves from entities, we're protecting ourselves from things that might want to come and play. And, there is an element of when you're doing witchcraft, your aura is lovely and bright. There's an element of when you're doing spellcraft, you're in touch with your higher self and your vibrations are lovely and attractive. So there is really a idea that things are kind of attracted to you when you start doing this kind of work. And some of these entities may be deities. So you may find that when you start working, you may find that things are kind of pricking their ears up. They're noticing you. You may notice that deities are starting to kind of feel like they're tapping you on the shoulder. You may see things around in your life that feels like certain deities are starting to take an interest in you. The same could be said for fairies and other things, and the same could be said for your ancestors. Your ancestors might be going, oh, you're finally taking notice. You're finally becoming part of a world where we can start interacting with you. So there is an element of once you start doing this work, your aura, your vibrations, all of these things are heightened and people are starting to take notice. So having that element of protection, having that element of really kind of ramparting and putting a barrier between this is who I'd like to be able to communicate with me, and this is who I wouldn't want to communicate with me, is a good idea. Or when you're first starting out, you might have that protection as being really strong and say, I don't want anything bothering me. I just want to do my own thing and only work with that which I'm inviting in. So there is a real element of protection being outside entity type things. If the work that you're doing is communicating with outside things, your protection may include saying things like only let some things through rather than let everything through. So you may want to have a different type of protection if you're working with, for example, spirits or ancestors. You might actually want to have them invited into your circle and invited into your space. But entities aren't really the only thing that you're protecting yourself from. So if you don't believe in all these entities, you still might want to bring protection into your space. And another thing that you could be protecting yourself from is just the energy that's in the area at the moment. So you can choose to cleanse the area. You can choose to spend some time clearing the energy. You can clear this energy, and that then creates that level of protection because it's not in your space for you to then protect yourself against it. So if you're in your own home, clearing the energy is a really good way to work. If you're in a space that's not your own, and particularly if you're in nature, clearing that space may not feel right. You may want to set up a barrier between yourself and the energy, or you may want to sort of put yourself into a bubble to separate you from that energy, because it may not be right to cleanse and to clear all of the energy from a space that isn't yours. So if you're working in somebody else's temple or somebody else's space, they may have worked really hard on creating those energies. And if you're out in nature, nature belongs in nature. You're in their space, they're not in yours. You also might want to clear your own energy that's feeling not helpful. So you may have things that you've been thinking about during the day that you want to just keep away from your mind right now. You may have things that you've sort of felt very highly and strongly about that will really stop you from working and doing the work you want to do. You may have ideas and thoughts that will be an aggravation and a hindrance to the work that you're doing. So when you're clearing, you're not just necessarily clearing your space from energy that other people have left. You may be clearing your space from the things that are in you and are of you that aren't going to be helpful now. So protection is also about protecting yourself from all these extra things that will flavor the energy in a way that you don't want it flavored, or that might just distract you. So part of the role of protection is also to keep you safe. It's to keep you feeling safe. So safety isn't just about where you are and what's in the environment and what dangerous things can cause you problems. It's also about convincing yourself, your nervous system, your subconscious, that you're safe. So by putting protection up, you help to soothe your nervous system. You help to soothe those little voices that say, I'm not safe, I don't feel safe. Because if your subconscious doesn't feel safe, then it will help you to stay feeling unsafe. So part of doing protection, part of putting protection around, is to create a space within you and within your own emotions that feels safe. And that's just as important. So we've got some ideas now of the role of protection. So we know that protection needs to put a cover almost over that big bright light of us doing magic, that shiny sound vibration. We want to put almost like a cover over it so we don't draw attention to ourselves, unless we're specifically looking to do that. We also know that we want to create safety and a feeling of safety within ourselves. We also know that we want to cleanse the space of any energy that's not ours, that isn't going to help us, or put a barrier around that so that we're separate. And we also know that we want to cleanse ourselves of anything that's going to be problematic. So we want to have a cleansing for us too. So these are the roles of protection. This is what ever the kind of protection we do needs to achieve. So perhaps the most important thing of our protection is that it protects us from ourselves. It protects us from our mind. If we think we're going to be afraid, we will create fear. If we think there's going to be scary things, we will attract the scary things. If we think there should be problems, we will create problems. So perhaps our mind is the scariest thing that we have to deal with in any ritual. So having that protection being something that we believe in is going to be the most important thing. So whatever you choose to do, make it congruent, make it something that your subconscious is going to be okay being on board with. So things that can help us quell the nervous system and help us to really kind of convince the nervous system that it's happy, help it to reset, help us work with our vagus nerve, which is the nerve that creates the sense of danger and senses things that our conscious mind isn't picking up. Things that help us to calm and reset this part of ourselves are things like, for example, chanting. There can be movement. So having certain actions that you do and chanting are two things that will really help. Another thing is that our nervous system kind of likes cues. So if we're giving it something that we do every time, so for example, you may do salt and water, for example, that will help your nervous system to recognize that when this cue happens, I need to feel like this. So creating the chanting, but also you may have words or actions that you wish to use that then your mind associates with the feeling of the chanting. So for your first couple of rituals, you might do lots of chanting and you may spend longer calming your nervous system. But as you get more used to ritual and as you get better at doing rituals, you may be able to program your nervous system with either a word or an action, which brings you back as a cue to that feeling of calm. And things you can chant include the witch's rune. They include runes. They include the RUN, which druids use. They include the names of your deities. They include things like you may wish to chant your magical name, or you may wish to chant a word in another language like Latin or Greek, for example, that means safety and calm. Other forms of well-used protection are things that other people already use. So things that you might have encountered in other people's rituals. So for example, Wiccans use a magic circle. They will cast a circle and that becomes their protection, or part of its role becomes their protection, because the magical circle is also to put you into between the worlds, between the worlds stay, or to really contain the energy that you're raising. So the magical circle for Wiccans has lots of different purposes. Things that ritual magicians use is they use something called the LBRP, the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. And this basically clears a space completely. So you probably wouldn't want to do it outside or in somebody else's magical space or even in somebody else's room. But in your own space, doing the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, the LBRP, is a really good way of creating both a sense of safety and clearing the space, making it somewhere that's become somewhere that's safe to work magic. You can also use spiritual bouncers. So you can ask for your Dizir, which is a Norse kind of protective energy, or you can ask for your ancestors to protect you. You may even ask for a deity or deities to protect you within the rite. So asking for almost kind of spiritual bouncers, things that are round your space, not allowing anything that's going to cause it problems within. You can use nature in terms of bringing in any sort of plants or anything that you see as being protective. You can use the elements, so you can use salt and water, or you can just use water, or you can use a candle to light for protection, or you can use incense. So you can use nature and the elements in this way. You can use words, and these words will create that sense of protection for you by being kind of triggers and cues. So if there are things that you already have that keep you safe, like prayers, for example, or like a poem that makes you feel safe, a few words from a story that maybe your parents told you when you were a child. These things can create a sense of protection as well. So words also have power, and using the same words, using poetry, maybe you can write your own words and your own poem that represents protection and will help you to create that protection with everything you do. So these are just ideas. There's no one right way, and different things will work in different rituals for different reasons. Different things will work in different spaces. But what do you think will work for you? What sort of things do you think will create that sense of protection and safety for your rights? Maybe try a few things out, see what works. But really, it's down to you. It's down to what works for you in ritual. But protection is an important thing for a lot of people. So do think about really finding a way to create that sense of safety and that sense of protection within any witchcraft or magical work that you are doing.